because it's a zero-sum game. Because the way to look at economic development is via a region, i.e. the south suburbs. Well, Northwest Indiana, essentially, those are suburbs of Chicago. They're just extended into another political jurisdiction, okay? And so because of that, because of the marked difference, it makes it easy for a business to essentially have a competitive advantage, because you can go to Indiana and yes, you can get those advantages. Or you can go in the south suburbs and now you're looking at higher taxes and some of these other things, which makes the use of some of the incentives that we've had available so important.
And we're going to get to those. Ted, I saw you want to chime in on
I was just going to add that I think one way we saw that manifest, that the competition from Will County and Northwest Indiana, was with the soda tax, the sweetened beverage tax, where to their credit, the beverage merchant industry did a good job of raising awareness, but really it was people that voted with their feet. And I talked to people in Will County at stores. It was easy to find them as they're coming out of the store and they're pushing a cart full of soda. You know, hey, are you shopping here because of the soda tax? And it led to many conversations. So that was just kind of the straw that broke the camel's back. But I think we're seeing sort of the same kind of factors at play here when we're talking about the economic incentives in Cook County and their effect on the Southland. It's a very precarious situation where if you put pressure on too much parts of the systems, you're going to break it. And that's the fear, I think.
And so that is the thing, that is the fear. And so, I mean, and people I'm starting to sense that something is amiss. But, you know, so now that you all have created and said the feelings are real, they're not, the perception is reality in terms of the competition between a rock and a hard place. I like that metaphor. So what incentives or what tools are you using? What tools are you encouraging your villagers to use to confront this imbalance? Because I know that we have businesses, we still have big boxes, we still have you know, businesses moving into the area. So how do we compete?
Well, it's tough. I think two things. One, you know, there are, you know, the incentives that we may have at our disposal, whether they be tax increment financing. And there are limits to that. There are certain criteria that you have to follow in order to be set up in a TIF district. And then you also have incentives that reduce the amount of taxes, which are the Class 6Bs, Class 8s, et cetera. But on the other hand, when you don't have that, or in conjunction with that, you have to be able to find things to sell about your community. So one of the things that we do in South Holland, we have the good fortune of having a very stable government. Our mayor's been in for a long time, 24 years. Don DeGraff, he's one of the reasons this is such a great job for me, because he's just a really an excellent mayor. But we are able to focus on three things. The fact that we're business friendly, we're able to emphasize the stable government piece there. We're very actively recruiting business and we want them to feel welcome. Secondly, we have great transportation access. Right, you can get to anywhere from South Holland. You know, 94, 294, 394, 57, all within 15 minutes of each other. And we're at the intersection of 94 and 80. And then third, our strong community values. Our motto is Faith, Family, Future. We're known as a community of churches. We've got 34 churches, I think, in 7 square miles. Some communities have 34 bars in 7 square miles. That doesn't make us a perfect community. But it does create an atmosphere that at least people have to think about in terms of being involved within the community. And so we're able to package essentially, though I call them 3 hooks, we're able to package those along with any other incentive or whatever tool we need to move forward.
So let's focus on that Class 8, if you don't mind, because we know trends. So the Class 8 is an incentive. Tell us about the Class 8.
So the Class 8 was...
Give the viewing audience just a real background in terms of Class 8 and how we use it.
So Cook County has a tax incentive program that allows property taxes to be reduced from an assessment level of 25% to 10% for 10 years, and then it starts to climb up. The Class 8 was a special class that was created for 5 townships in South Cook County Bremen, Bloom, Calumet, Thornton, and Rich townships, because in the 80s it was created, because of the extenuating circumstances and extremely blighted property. So even back in the 80s, our values were languishing. We had underperforming parcels. We had the brownfield legacy and the change in international steel development and other things that significantly impacted our region. So the Class 8 was available by right to municipalities or to applicants, investors, with community support. So it requires a resolution. All of the tax incentives require municipal support in order to advance for consideration farther. So it has to be in context of, is it aligned with what the municipality's economic development goals are? That being said, the Class 8 was really seen as very efficient, effective, and pretty streamlined. In the last couple of years, there's been some well-intentioned amendments that have been added to all classes that increase the perspective that it is a unnavigable incentive program.
Okay.
You need to hire an attorney to help you navigate it, understand it, and it's costly, it's bureaucratic, and it has reduced its effectiveness.
Okay. Ted, did you have anything else?
I could add, and I looked at the Cook County website this morning, and just to explain or to add to what this means to businesses. So for a $400,000 property, the difference between a 25% and a 10% tax rate, which by the way can be renewed after 10 years in perpetuity. So the difference between what you're charged in property taxes is $11,000 versus $28,000. So that's a typical example that the county uses.
Okay.
One other just addition is there's this other classification of 6B, which is for industrial only, and Class 8 is for commercial and industrial.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, like John was saying earlier, I mean, I had the impression that the Southland had an equal amount of commercial and industrial properties relative to the western or northern suburbs. But in fact, I was kind of surprised to learn when our sister publication, the Chicago Tribune, did a series this year called The Tax Divide, and the Cook County Assessor's Office kind of pushed back on some of those findings that lower valued properties in the Southland were being unfairly overcharged, and wealthier properties in other regions were being undercharged. The assessor pointed out, look, you in the Southland, you don't have as high a percentage of commercial and industrial properties. And I was surprised to find out that is true, that we have a much lower percentage. I believe it's because of the number of vacancies, perhaps, or so on. But if you look around and you see a lot of industry and so on, you would have the perception that we have just as much or perhaps more than some of the North Shore sort of bedroom communities.
So if I could just maybe put a number to that.
Yeah, we have about 3 minutes on this segment here.
Our percentage of residential versus commercial, we have over 70% residential in the south suburbs.
Okay.
So that's including underperforming or vacant commercial. So we don't have the same level of diversity as other regions.
And to add to what Christy just mentioned, many of those communities don't have a large industrial base. They have more of a commercial base. And what is happening with commercial now, Amazon, et cetera.
Right.
And one of the advantages that South Holland has is that we have a very robust industrial base. And so that allowed us to concentrate on that during the lean times and retain those businesses so that they didn't leave. And then those, the workers, et cetera, would help to fuel any of the other commercial companies that we might be able to attract.
Wow. So it is a complex issue, as you were just saying. So why should, as we just wrap up this portion of the conversation, why should every resident be concerned about the changes to the Class 8 incentives? How does it come back and impact them, every resident?
Well, at the end of the day, it places a bigger burden on them, on residents. We already know that the taxes are high. One of the challenges is the perception that the taxes are high.
Okay.
So the businesses have the same perception that the residents do. So it is a fight every day to even get a business to consider the south suburbs, because when you mention where you are, they say, oh, I don't want to go there. As an example, we have a Panera in town. It took 4.5 years to get Panera to say yes. Didn't say no, but never said yes.
Okay.
And a lot of it had to do with the perception. And hey, it's going to be costly to do business here,
Okay.
and all these other factors.
Sure.
Unfortunately, we were able to convince them otherwise, but it took a long time to do that.
Got you. Okay.
So one of the things that I would also add is that last year in 2017, the General Assembly increased exemptions for homeowners and seniors, senior citizens, which effectively, if you're a property owner, homeowner, sounds good. You have a little bit more of a tax write-off off of your property taxes. Unfortunately, what happens, the greater the exemptions, it displaces it rises cost on everyone else. And this is specifically for residential homeowners. And so, as I mentioned, we have 70% on average across our region in our communities. And so, who's left holding the burden of taxes? It's the commercial and industrial property owners. And so, without a robust system, we've talked about, we've just barely touched upon some of the changes that have occurred in the incentive program just this year, but it really makes them, less useful. And the immediate perception of the individual investors who are looking at our community is it's no longer effective for me to do business in South Holland or Lansing or other communities when I can go next door across the state line and be in the same market shed.
Right.
I can still be the same distance from Chicago. Or if I'm in Matteson, and you mentioned the big boxes,
Right.
I can easily go on the other side of 57 and be in Will County.
And get the same workforce
And
and the
same
same
workforce,
customers
Wow. At lower
At
cost.
less
at
cost.
lower cost.
Ted, do you have anything else as we wrap this segment up?
Sure.
Okay.
I would just add that every business makes decisions about what's cost effective for them, and homeowners make those same decisions. So as the burden becomes too great on homeowners, people are making decisions that they can't make it here anymore. And there are all these headwinds, as John indicated, online, affecting retail. We see communities even like Orland Park that cut back services. And as we see cutbacks in services in towns like Harvey and other places, libraries and so on, then it becomes even less attractive for people to move here. So all of these things affect each other.
It's a catch-22
Yeah.
that you're saying. Rock and a hard place, not to mix metaphors. But thank you all very much for this. I think we've set up the context so people can understand what this Class 8 issue is and the impact and how it will impact them. What I'd like to do in the next segment is really give you guys an opportunity to sort of reflect out loud in terms of what can we do. I know that there are things that we can do at the county level, there are things that we can do potentially locally, and there are things that we can do in terms of getting people involved. So I thank you all for this first segment, and we're going to come back momentarily and continue with this conversation. Thank you all very much for being with us. Again, as I said, this is going to be the first segment of this airing, and so the next segment that we're going to record is going to play the following Friday. So please don't go away. Thank you. I'm Jeff Cohn of Brave Dialogue.